Hello, everyone. Welcome to Passion and Prose, which is our first ever romance panel here at the store. That's the most enthusiastic beginning I've ever had to an event. My name's Alexis. I'm your host for the evening. Before we get started, a couple things. If you have not heard my other two announcements, we're doing all-night happy hour downstairs in the den tonight. So if you want to go down and get a glass of wine after the event, you should do that. Our authors are already partaking. I also want to do a shameless plug for our in-store romance book group. It's fairly new, but we are getting it off the ground. We meet Sundays. Our next meeting is August 27th at 6 p.m. If you have any questions, come talk to me after the event. With all of that out of the way, tonight we are very excited to welcome 5 talented romance novelists to our store. In front of me, we have Mary Burton. If you give a little wave over here. Her latest book, The Hangman, continues her Forgotten Files series featuring Virginia State Police agent Julia Vargas. Tracey Livesay, am I saying that right?
Yes.
Yay! Who is promoting her new book, Love on My Mind, the first in a series of interracial romances featuring strong, successful heroines. Sarah MacLean, right here. A prolific historical romance writer whose latest novel, The Day of the Duchess, is the third in her Scandal and Scoundrel series, and Alicia Rai, who's right here. Alicia Rai. Should have checked on that one. She is the author of contemporary romance novels, and her new book, Hate to Want You, is the first in her Forbidden Hearts series. And finally, moderating the discussion tonight is Diane Gaston. She is a member of the Washington Romance Writers Association and is also herself the author of historical romances. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming all our authors to Politics and Prose Bookstore.
Well, welcome. It's so exciting to have so many people here. It's wonderful. First of all, I'd just like to ask folks if you're a romance reader, just raise your hand. Okay, most everybody's a romance reader. Okay, so we don't have to do the basics. We don't have to explain what romance is. So, let me turn it over to the panelists, and we would just. Why don't you each tell a little bit about your book and a little bit about why you write romance? And we'll start with you, Mary.
I write romantic suspense, and it's kind of gritty romantic suspense. I always say it's the scary Mary version. But what I love about romantic suspense is it offers a great blend of hope. You know, the romance offers hope at the end, even though it's not always a traditional happily ever after. There always is the hope that things will work out. And then it also weaves in justice because the mystery's solved. So I love the blend of both of those. And you see a lot of that in my Forgotten Files series. And these are all cold cases where current officers are going back. You know, there's always someone that remembers a case that wasn't solved. No, there's always someone that hasn't forgotten. And in this case, this is a woman who's going back to kind of figure out what happened to her father. Everybody believes he's killed himself 30 years ago, but she's now determined as an officer to go back and find out what really happened.
Hi, everyone. Whoa. That's very loud. Hi, I'm Alicia Rai. I write contemporary romance. I've written a little bit of everything before. I have like some paranormals under my belt too. I've got some zombies under my belt too. But now I focus mostly on contemporary. Some people call it erotic. Some people call it sexy. Whatever. I never know what anyone's like kink meter is. So. We'll go with hot for now. And my latest book, Hate to Want You, is the first. It's my Avon debut. It's the first in a new series, and it features the son and daughter of 2 warring families. It is a contemporary though, and they, their families were really great, very close together, and then something happened, and then they weren't anymore, and their sort of budding romance got ripped apart, and now it's 10 years later, and they have to sort of work their way through their families and themselves and all this other angsty stuff. So, and the second book, Wrong to Need You, is out in November, so you only have to wait a little while. It's very close.
Hi, I'm Tracey Livesay. I write contemporary interracial romance. I feel like I'm in Vegas. I have a drink and a microphone.
What are you going to sing?
I don't know, some Frank, apparently. This is how it goes. Sorry. So the book that I'll be talking about today is the first in a series, my Shade of Love series with Avon. It's called Love on My Mind. And I wrote it because I wanted to do a twist on the alpha hero. I love the alpha hero. I don't like alpha assholes, but I do like the alpha hero. And I thought, what if your hero didn't express his emotions because he couldn't? And so my hero has Asperger's in the first book. And I wrote that because my oldest son has Asperger's. And he is the cutest thing you ever want to see. Since I wrote the book, he like grew 8 inches, so he's almost 6 feet tall. But he's so adorable. And I just thought, like, because I believe in romance, I believe in true love. I've been with my husband for over 20 years. I tried to imagine the woman that would fall in love with him. And so that's the story that I wrote in that book. The second book is also out, and the third book comes out in August. So if you do read them all, you don't have to wait long. So anyway, that's why I write romance, and that's the book I'll be talking about.
I'm Sarah MacLean, and I write historical romances. And my current book, the book that I'm here for, is The Day of the Duchess, and it's my divorce book. The hero and heroine, it begins with the heroine marching onto the floor of Parliament in 1834 and demanding a divorce, which required an act of Parliament at the time. And I wrote it because you don't see divorce in historicals, and you see divorce in the world, and you don't see broken marriages, I think, as much as you could in the world, in romance. And I really just wanted to write a broken marriage book and a reconciliation book. And so I did, and this is it. I write romance because I've always read romance, and it's always given me hope, and it's always given me an opportunity to be the hero of the story and to put myself at the center of the story and to see women triumph instead of die. So that's why I write it. Sorry, Tolstoy.
The latest statistics are that 34% of all fiction books sold are romance novels. So that's quite an impressive number. So I would say that romance novels are very powerful part of the industry. I'd like each of you to talk about why you think that romance novels are as powerful as they are.
Well, I think it gets back to when I said it offers that hope. It takes a reader on a journey. I think a lot of us are exploring kind of everyday things, everyday emotions, and I think that can be very powerful for readers. Plus, we take them on a really a fun ride in many cases. They're either solving crimes or getting a divorce in Regency, England, or, it's things that it takes people out of the norm, and I think readers enjoy that.
Yeah, so I was dating this guy for a little while. People who are laughing expect me to follow that up with and then he drank out of Chinese containers for the entire night. This isn't one of those stories. I have many of those stories. But so I was dating this guy for a while, and he was really sweet. He was very pragmatic, and he was very rational and logical, and and he was kind of a hoot because on our second date, he was like, "Just so you know, I don't believe in love, and I'll never love you." And I was like, and I said, "Whoa. Oh, you're a good-looking, emotionally unavailable man. You're my catnip, sir." And so he was lovely. I do actually appreciate him quite a bit. And so, I was like, whatever, I don't care, let's hang out. And so, we continued dating for a while, and he gave me lots of fun snippets to share with people. But one of the things was one night he was like, why romance? Like, why, of all the things you could write, like, why do you like romance? Explain it to me, because I don't understand love. And I was like, okay, yeah. Okay. And we were cuddling at the time. So I was like, okay, yeah. I was like, I don't believe in love. Let's cuddle harder. So I was like, okay, sure. Like, let me tell you. And so, I told him about hope and all the adventures and, all this. And then, like, it's like that is sort of like, that is all true. And then, I really thought about it. He kept pushing me. And finally I was like, you know what it is? It's the Black moment. I love the Black moment. I do. I love the idea that everything can go wrong and everything can be bad and you'll feel like you can never overcome this, and then you do. And I think at its core, like, that is the great thing. I mean, when we talk about hope, that's it, right? Like, everything is going wrong. And I think, in our lives, like, that happens where you just have Black moments. And then when you read a romance, you're like, oh, well, but they overcame this. And even if that Black moment is nothing like what your Black moment is, it still sort of fills you with, like, optimism that you can overcome whatever your moment is. So thanks, guys.
Oh my God, what was the question?
Why are romance novels so powerful?
Okay. Let's take a moment. Well, what everyone said, I mean, it's funny that when we talk about romance novels, people like turn up their nose, but in every sort of movie, TV show, or whatever, romance is a part of it. And if it's not, people online are making it a part of it. You know what I'm saying? They're like, hashtag, Dany and Jon Snow. Like, I don't know, like, because it's an essential, I mean, to me, it's the strongest emotion. It's what makes us do anything. And we love to read about it, and we love to see it. When I read my first romance novel at the age of 11, which, oh God, so bad. It exposed me to worlds that I didn't even, know existed. And I lived in this small town, and I'm reading about people, in London, because I was reading Harlequin Presents, and reading, about this huge world, and that was just so amazing to me. And it took me out of where I was. It let me know that there was more out there for me, that I could expect more. And it taught me to respect myself. It taught me what I should expect. I mean, I know guys hate hearing that, but it's so true, It also taught me that I could have good orgasms, which is very, very important, and that they would be even better with the man I love, so that's nice. But I think we all read for that emotion. We read for the ups and downs, and even though we know there's going to be a happily ever after at the end, we want to see how they get there, and that is what keeps us coming back. Book after book, author after author, everyone has their own voice. They have their own way of seeing the world, and that's what we want to tap into, and I think that's why romance is so popular.
I mean, all of this. I would just add that, it's a genre that's 90% read by women, largely written by women, and largely about women. And women don't get that, right? They don't get to be the center of the story. A romance novel is basically just an adventure novel with a woman as the hero, and with also a man as a hero. 2 heroes, you get 2 for the price of 1, like orgasms in romances. Right. So I think there's some value to that. I think the fact that 34% of the paperback market is because women have money, and we want to see ourselves triumph instead of die. Here we go again, Tolstoy. So yeah, I think it's about It's about the fact that there's not a whole lot of opportunity to see women at the center of the story and to have access to the female gaze. And we get to do that.
And Elisa, you talked about the black moment, and how many of your readers have reached out to you and your books have helped them? I mean, we all have had those letters from readers that our books just brought them through the bad times. And I mean, I don't know if everybody gets those letters, but
Yeah, they are. I mean, that is sort of the reason you keep writing, right? Like,
Exactly.
because it's not easy, guys. It's like really hard. But it is like that. You get a letter like that or a DM or whatever, like, and it makes you just feel like, you know, you're a superhero. You did it.
Can you give any examples, any of you, of any readers who have reached out to you to let you know how your books have helped them or how what they've meant to them? Anybody?
I have one that I think would be fine to share. I got a letter from a reader who she began it with, "I want to tell you that my husband is a really nice guy." And he loves me, and he's just really ordinary. And our life is very ordinary. And one day I came home, and he had read your book, and we had sex, and I had my first orgasm having sex with him. And I was like, my husband came home. I was like, "I saved a marriage today. What did you do?" Like, but you hear stories, and I'm sure everybody here has amazing stories about, you know, what we perceive as like life-changing experiences coming out of romance novels about women who leave their husbands and women who, you know, change their lives. But I really love that one because it's just about two people who liked each other and now they get to have good sex too. You're welcome.
Anybody else have any stories to add of readers who have reached out to you to let you know that your books have made a difference?
No, you go first.
All right. You know, I think the ones that mean a lot to me are the ones where somebody says like, "Oh, I feel seen," like I feel like you saw me or like you represented me. And like with this last book, the heroine has depression, and so as soon as advanced copies started going out, like I started getting like messages here and there, and then they got more and more, and they were all sort of like, "Oh, like thank you so much, like for just, you know, it didn't like take over her life and it didn't define her, and you know, just like, you know, thank you for letting me be seen." And I was just like, well, that's heartrending and also awesome. So it was so those are the ones where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like save this in a little folder for when they make the Museum of Romance. I'll be in it.
Yeah, I don't get the ones with those stories. Those would be great. I write contemporary interracial relationships, and race isn't a big part of the stories, although they acknowledge, you know, that they are different races, but it's not a discussion. That's not what I write. So the books that I tend to get, or the letters that I tend to get are from like people who are like, yeah, you know, my son's in an interracial relationship and I didn't quite understand it, but you know, like I read your book and so it's not all about the race. I thought it'd be so hard, but it doesn't seem to be hard in your books. And I'm like, no, it's not very hard. So those are the stories. I mean, those are the letters that I get, which is actually the reason that I write what I write, and we probably talk about that later. So.
And I started off writing historicals, and I used to get more letters like that then. Now that I write these kind of gritty thrillers, people don't talk to me as much as they used to. We had the big Romance Writers of America conference last week, and we have a big book signing. And I always joke, people are afraid to come up and get my book. But when I wrote the historicals, I would get, you know, you helped me through chemotherapy. I just had a really rough, my husband was deployed and it was a rough move for us, and your book helped me get through it. And so those things are really touching. I mean, it's like, oh, it's not, you think you're writing in this vacuum and nobody's reading, and then you realize you've touched somebody like that, and it means a lot.
So why do you specifically write romance? I mean, I know that this will be a little bit repetitive, but why romance? What is it that you get out of writing a romance?
Well, we know our books are going to end with a happily ever after. That's part of the romance genre. Your books, there's got to be that hope of things ending well. But how they get there is just, that's the interesting part to me. It's, you know, we all know a mystery is going to be solved at the end of a mystery, but we want to know if we can figure it out before we get to the end. And it's the same with the romance. You know you know where it's going, but it's just that journey the writer takes you on, and the journey I like to take my readers on. That's just, it's just. I mean, if I can mix a mystery in there, it's just. I think it's just a very powerful storytelling.
Yeah, I think, and you sort of touched on this, and I think you're going to talk a little bit later about, you know, how formulaic or whatever. People, that is the criticism, right? That why romance, because it's so formulaic. And you sort of, you know, touched on it. Like, yeah, there is like the genre convention of a happily ever after, but there is literally no other rule. There is no other rule. There is nothing that says that you have to do anything in your book if you have romance. Maybe it's good to keep them both alive at the end. To lend to a happily ever after, or on. Oh well, if they're aliens, they can go on Earth. They don't have to be on Earth. They could be space monsters. They can be a lot of things, right? Like and there are space monster erotica if you're interested. I've read everything. I started reading romance when I was 13 years old. I found a Shirley Busby in the library, and I was so excited because it had half-naked people on it. And this was pre-Tumblr, so like you didn't get half-naked. Like it is easy for these kids now to get half-naked people, full naked people. It was not easy for me. So I found a Shirley Busby, and I was like, this is awesome. There's half-naked people on it. And I read it. And then I went around the library, and I found every other historical romance because they were the easiest ones to identify because they had a lot of flesh on them. But after I did that, I was like, man, but it's everything. It's contemporary, it's sci-fi, it's fantasy, it's paranormal. It's literally, we have stretched into every possible genre. There is nothing that is safe from us. There's nothing that's safe from love. So I think, you know, I think that's why I write it, and that's why I think people read it, is because, you know, I see sometimes like people say, oh, I don't like romance. I like space blasters. And I'm like, why not both? Why not both? Why not have it all? We can have it all. Romance lets you have it all. So I think, you know, I think that's the reason.
Yeah, I'd mentioned before I read my first romance at 11, and I mean, you hear it over and over. You read your first romance, and you are hooked. Like, you just can't imagine reading anything else. And we are voracious. Like, we read 3, 4, 5. Like, honestly, if I could just sit on a couch and read and have people like bring me food, that is my dream. Like, I love that. But as I did that, as I started reading books and read them when I should have been doing work and hiding them in textbooks, and I'm just like, you know, in the back of church, I'm supposed to be ushering, and I got the hymnal open, but I got a Harlequin Presents in the middle because God loves love too. But I am reading, and I'm loving it, but no one's looking like me. You know, like all of the heroines are peaches and cream, and they have, you know, blonde hair or red hair, and they all have green eyes, which is not statistically possible. But that's what's going on. And as much as you love that genre and you love what you're reading, you want to see yourself, you know, represented. You want to feel that you're worthy of love, that you are someone who's, you know, who's beautiful. And so that's why I write. I mean, I write it because I love the genre. It's my favorite. I wouldn't write anything else, but I write what I write specifically because I was that little girl, and I want someone to, to pick up my book and see herself represented and know that she is loved and beautiful and worthy of a romance and worthy of a man doing, groveling for her, because I think that's important. So
We used to definitely clap for that. So my friends and I used to call that pink nipple syndrome because everyone's nipples were pink.
or raspberries.
Everyone, raspberries or cherries.
Yes.
They were all some sort of delicious pink fruit. And so
peaches and cream.
And I do remember, after my first book, and the heroine in that one was a woman of color, and somebody sent me an email and said, "It's the first time I've seen brown nipples in a romance." And I was like, well, I'll pat myself on the back and I'll take that one then. But pink nipple syndrome. That's what we call it.
But romance is kind of ahead of the curve, don't you think? Because this wasn't in fiction 30 years ago or 20 years ago. But I always feel like romance is just a little ahead of the other genres in terms of just everything. I mean,
I would say if you're talking about technology or digital, I absolutely agree with that. I think
subject matter.
No, I think we're sorry guys. I think we're right on the curve because I think whatever you see reflected out in the real world is sort of played out in every genre. I don't think we're particularly more advanced than any other one, though you think we would be because we are predominantly women. But that brings its own challenges that sci-fi maybe doesn't face. So I think but if you're talking about the digital revolution or self-publishing, yes, I agree. We're definitely ahead of the curve, more so than any other genre.
I'd like to hear Sarah weigh in on that.
On what?
Well, on whether or not you think that romance is ahead of the curve in terms of subject matter, and also just on what was the question that I asked?
Well, I will
Why
say
romance?
that I agree with Alicia
About what you get out of writing romance.
Oh, well, okay. Well, first I'll say I agree with Alicia, and I think I think we're ahead of the curve on formatting and scope in terms of the sheer magnitude of us publishing it. But no, I think we're publishing needs to do better, and romance needs to do better, and we're all fighting this fight at the same rate. I'd like to see us be ahead of the curve on that because I think we have the opportunity to because of what Alicia said, which is we're all women and we should know about curves.
On many levels.
Exactly. But why do I write romance? I mean, I think everybody's covered it. I mean, for all the reasons that we said, and for community. I mean, look around you, right? This is Politics and Prose's first romance event. Nobody expects Politics and Prose to have this event, and here we all are, and it's because there's such a rich community of people who love the genre, and that's been true since the beginning.
Yeah, I said to somebody today, they were like, oh, you travel so much. Is that a problem? Do you miss having a community? And I was like, I could literally go to any city and find people to have dinner with. This is how vast this community and how lovely this community is. I've never had a problem. I'm never lonely when you're a romance reader. Never.
We're about halfway through the program, and I wonder if any of you in the audience have questions. And if you do, please come up to the mic.
Okay, I have a question. Since you guys talked about several subject matters, criminal investigations, depression, Asperger's, and of course the historical element, what is the deepest amount of research that you've had to do to feel like you have a complete book that honors the subject matter that you are dealing with in the story?
Well, for the mystery or the criminal investigation, I have done all kinds of stuff. Our local Citizens Police Academy, I've taken that 12-week course. I've taken the FBI Citizens Academy. There's a Writers Police Academy that's held in Wisconsin in August. It's phenomenal. You have a whole weekend of, you can actually walk up to the experts and ask them the questions without scaring them. Because I can promise you, everybody who has a friend in forensics, when you email them your questions, they don't get back to you. But I've done that. I've been to the shooting range. I've interviewed police officers. I've interviewed canine officers. Just because usually the best nuggets in the story come from the research. And so I do all that. Still continue to.
So I'm like a weirdo perfectionist who's never happy with anything. So I'm never like at a point where I'm like, done. Fantastic. I've got it all in here. But I think what helps is just, I really love people. Like, I'm an introvert, yes, but I love people. I love talking to them and being their friend, as long as they let me then leave at some point and go hide. And so I have like this vast network of people who are more than happy to like talk to me if I'm like, hey, let's talk about like coping strategies for depression, or, oh, you're a psychiatrist. Let's talk about this. Oh, you speak Spanish. Can you help me with this? And, so there's always somebody I found who is, because this community is so great and so vast, and because our friendships are so tight, there's always somebody who can help you. Whatever you're writing, I just assume whoever I'm writing is represented as somewhere in the world, and I just have to find them. And I've never had an issue finding them. And I think as long as you just talk to people and are friendly, you can find almost anything. So.
I'm a big nerd. I've always been a big nerd, which is fine.
You're amongst friends.
Yes, I accept it and embrace it now. And so I love research. Before I start writing any book, you have to tear me away from research because I'm scared to start writing the book because the book is perfect in my head, and the moment I start writing it, it becomes not perfect. So research is great because I can pretend that I'm working, but I'm not writing words, and that's just like the best feeling. It is. It's the best feeling in the world. And so the book that I'm coming out at the end of this month is an amnesia story. And when I and when I pitched it as While You Were Sleeping meets Regarding Henry. So I love it. I knew I wasn't the only one. I knew it. And so I read amnesia memoirs. I read articles about amnesia. Like, I was all into it. I loved it. And then I also do a lot of research, even on small issues, because I'm also a lawyer. And so if anyone tries to say, like, that's not real, I'd be like, no, I got proof. And we can have a discussion about it if you want to, step forward. So I'm all about the research. Yeah.
Yeah, research is the fun part. Writing is the torture. I would echo what Mary said about medicine is always, I write historicals, right? So literally anytime anything happens, people are going to die. And I have a friend who's a surgeon, and I routinely text him in the middle of the night and say, well, what if my hero got stabbed? And the knife was on the ground first, and he's like, that person's going to die. And so like I have to write author's notes to say things like, the villain was fastidiously clean. My favorite, author's notes are an author's friend. Any of you who are working currently who are unpublished and working on a book, remember the author's note. It can get you out of a lot of binds. I know this because I didn't put one into my book, Never Judge a Lady by Her Cover, about an indoor swimming pool, which did exist. There were 5 indoor swimming pools in London. This is one of those 3 days of research just to make sure swimming pools existed. There were 5 indoor swimming pools in London. And my hero in that book owns a swimming pool, and things happen in that swimming pool that are delicious, except there's no scenario in which the heroine would look at him and say, so how's this filtered? Right? So just before we, how's this filtered? Literally, you guys, like once every 10 days, I get an email about like concern that they might get cholera or dysentery in this pool. It's filtered with charcoal. But like, how do you put that in? So now I wish I had.
Would have just taken one line.
Do as I say.
One line mid-coitus.
What kind of charcoal filter?
Why is there so much silt and charcoal at the bottom of this pool?
You use a good charcoal filter? Yes, I do.
So yeah,
Great.
do as I say, not as I do, you guys. Put your author's notes in.
Okay, let's have another question.
Hey there. Is this working? Wow. Like filleting this. This is for Alicia. I just read your most recent. It was delightful. Thank you for writing it.
Thank you.
I love the rest of you too. It reminded me of the Demolos family in Market Basket. Was it inspired by that whole?
It was not.
Oh, have you heard that?
I've somebody else asked me that too, and I've never heard of it. Like I've never. Right. So okay. So I was it wasn't. But I'm glad it inspired. Like it feels like
that just went down in like 2014.
Oh yeah. Sorry. It was sort of. I think all of us like are a little bit like we want to torture people a little bit, and so to me I was like, what's the best way I can torture like two lovers torn apart? Oh, I'll just make their families feud, like whatever. Shakespeare did it. It worked for Shakespeare, guys. It can work for Alicia Rai. So I was like, let me do that. And so that was legit the inspiration where I was like, and I've always really liked the idea of like, okay, well, their love sprang from their hate, right? Like, you can't, some things are so powerful that you cannot, even though everything tells you like you should never see this person again, you just can't stay away from them for years and years and years.
That's a better inspiration than like grocery store gossip.
Yeah, that's true. Indeed.
Are there any other questions?
Absolutely. and I'm here. This is a bookstore / industry / authors thing. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I had to come get a special order from Politics and Prose for a romance because they didn't sell romance here. But I did. I still came, supporting my local indie bookstore. So excited about the discussion group. But I will tell you that Sarah, if I may, used to work with Word Bookstore in Brooklyn. And there was a subscription.
I still do.
Okay, because they had stopped it for a while and they didn't get back in touch with me. But it was wonderful because there was a wonderful subscription. I'd get a newsletter or an email once every 6 weeks, 2 months. Here, pick one of these 4 books. And it actually enabled me to reach out of my usual genres. I discovered new authors. I have the fabulous job of being the manager of the busiest public library in the state of Maryland. So I also get a chance to share this love, literally as well as figuratively. And so I really miss that. That, though, was an opportunity for me to, looking at publishers, looking at bookstores, for me to support an independent bookstore, to be able to hear from an author. It was a great curation. It was fun. Sometimes it was a blast from the past. There was a contemporary. There might be a fantasy. But it was really cool that we were able to see different things and have that opportunity. And then we'd get a little box with a fun thing, like an extra bookmark or something. But it was a wonderful, wonderful marketing tool. Do any of you, and I understand there are publishers, people here, any of you, have you heard about this anywhere else in the country by any chance?
Does Rip Bodice do this?
They do something.
I'm looking at Alicia because she was
Yeah,
just there.
I'm like their extension, I guess, on the East Coast. So the Rip Bodice is the first like romance-only bookstore for anybody who doesn't know. It's fantastic. If you're ever in LA, please go. It's called the Ripped Bodice, and it's run by 2 adorable little sisters. They're not little sisters; they're just sisters. But and they're fantastic, and they've built this fantastic bookstore that people like travel all around the country for to go, and they love romance and all this stuff. And they do a lot of creative stuff like that, where they have like mystery books where you can, they'll describe it with like a blurb and you can go get it, and they have books and subscription stuff. I think that they're starting maybe, or have started, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's a great place, and I hope more indies sort of, this is sort of the first romance event. I know you have like a romance book club, which is awesome. I'll come to that if you'll have me. And so I think sort of indies, ignore romance to their detriment, because look at this room and look at how many of us spend money and want it. I would love to go to indie bookstores and buy my books. It's just hard.
We spend a lot of money.
We spend a lot of money.
We
have disposable income.
Yes.
But it is hard sometimes, to find indies that are romance receptive. And I know a lot of you. I remember being 14 years old and going into an indie bookstore and asking for, I don't know, a Jane Ann Krantz or something like that, and the bookseller treated me like garbage. It was terrible. So we have sort of I think a lot of us have indie PTSD. If you're a romance reader, but hopefully more will start to do that.
But I'm just going to speak to your question about Word, and also to this issue of indies across. Alicia's 100% right. Indies don't carry enough romance. We know that, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that, business related. There are a lot of us writing. The shelf life of a romance novel is 6 weeks before there's a whole new list coming out, and so it's a much harder genre to carry. But I do think that that's changing, and I think part of the reason why that's changing is because there are a lot of writers who are working with indies and trying really hard. Myself with Word, and Politics and Prose is here now, and 57th Street Books in Chicago now carries. These are very sort of posh bookstores, right? McNally Jackson in the city, and they're aware of us. They're aware that we have buying power. They're aware that we care, and there's a certain level of the judgment of romance is. It's not gone. I wish it was gone, but it's fading. Maybe slowly, but fading.
Money helps ease a lot of things.
Yeah. And also, the Washington Post has a review column every month now. NPR covers romance. Written by me, yes. Should all go read it. Everybody subscribe to the Washington Post. My editor is here tonight. No, but NPR is covering romance. There are other, there have been book roundups in the New York Times. So it's happening. It's just slow, and the reality is that, we need to spend money in indies, but it's also more expensive here, which isn't so bad. We appreciate that brick and mortar matters, and so it's about building a community and showing that the community exists. And I hope this won't be the last. This may be the first event at Politics and Prose, but I hope it won't be the last.
We have another questioner.
Hi. So since this is Politics and Prose, I'm going to ask a politics question. Sarah, sorry. And without spoiling the Day of the Duchess, I read, I don't know if it's the author's note, but that you rewrote the book the day after the election. And I was fascinated by that. And I did tear up at that one sentence. I really did cry at that point. And so could you talk more about that? And obviously that informed this book, but how, because these are women heroines moving forward. So thank you.
I'm going to spoiler alert my column for the Post this week, which is all about this. But but yes, I did. I was 270 pages into The Day of the Duchess on November 7th, and I was writing a classic alpha. He was cold-hearted and icy and horrible. And he was a ship that needed to be turned around. And those of you who've read my books before, you know that this is not a hero I dislike. This is a hero I really love writing. I love ships that need to be turned around. And I woke up on November 9th, and I remember on November 7th feeling oh, this is going to be awesome, because I'm writing this book and we're all going to be so happy at the end of it, so he won't be such a jerk. And on November 9th, I woke up and I realized that he had probably voted for Donald Trump. which was not great. Not great, especially since I'm like routinely late with my manuscripts. So I was also late for this manuscript. And I called my editor, who was also, similar to me, disturbed by the situation. And I said, I need to rewrite the whole book. Like, I can't, when you're 270 pages into a romance novel, you cannot hate the hero if you are the author. Like, you have to believe that he will turn around. And Alisha said earlier that there's only one rule in romance, which is the happily ever after, and I think that's true, but I would also add that I feel like we have a covenant with the reader that heroes are noble always, right? Like, they will always act nobly, and that is how we can love them even when they're emotionally unavailable and horrible. We have to believe that there's something in there, and I didn't believe that for him. So I rewrote the book, and suddenly it became the book of, a woman railing against the world. Sorry. I mean, and it all got in there, like the Elizabeth. What was amazing is I was rewriting this book while, the world was on fire. So like Elizabeth Warren got in, and Hillary Clinton got in. Like, they all sort of got in their own little echoes. But yeah, it wasn't easy. And I know I'm not the only one on this panel who has found it difficult to write.
Like the book that's coming out at the end of the month, my heroine is a lobbyist, and I don't even have to say anything more. I mean, that just says it all. I mean, and she's the one that gets amnesia, so thankfully there's something. But,
You saved her.
I do. But yeah, like Sarah, I mean, I was under deadline, and there was a good month or two where I was just like, I can't write. Like, I'm supposed to write this happily ever after, but how can I do that when I just don't feel it? So, but then you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I did an interview today, and one of the questions was, how do you write? Like, how do you write? How do you do anything right now? And I think part of that is sort of like a practical question, right? Like, how do you sit down and how do you create anything when it feels like the world is on fire? And I don't have an answer for that, because I think that's a very unique thing from person to person. What is it that gets you out of bed and sits you down at that computer? For me, I reward myself with chocolate and wine. But, it is, I think on a global, larger scale, I was writing this book and the second book, actually. I was sort of doing them. I was doing edits for this book and writing the second book in the series like around January, February. And the second book in the series has the hero his grandfather was a survivor in the Japanese internment camps. The heroine is Muslim American. And I was trying to write it during like the weekend of the Muslim man. And so it was, and I'm also a lawyer. There's a lot of lawyer refugees in romance. But it is.
Bring us you're tired.
Yeah, I'm tired. But, I was trying to keep abreast of that, what was going on at Dulles and keeping track of all that. And writing at that point seemed impossible. And I said to my friend, I was like, I don't want to write this because I just don't see a happily ever after. Like, I just don't see anything working out for anybody anymore. And she said, well, that's not really an option because you're under contract. Two, also, this is what you do. Writing romance is, romance refills the well of hope in the world. And when you write a romance, what you're doing is you're refilling that well of hope for someone out there when they read it. And so then I was like, well, if you've made me into like a superhero now, I guess I have to go finish this book. And that was sort of like what got me through. And it was really difficult, but just the idea like, okay, well, we're all kind of in this boat together, right? Everybody sort of needs something. And maybe what I'm doing right now can be somebody's something.
We have one more questioner. I want to make sure that you have time to ask your question and we have time to answer it.
Mike, can you hear me okay? I know that there's quite a lot of people, as you all said, you started out as readers and then became writers, and I'm probably not the only person in the audience who's also an aspiring writer, and I wondered if you had any advice to share for people who are getting started or trying to get started getting their own work, number one, finished, because that's the important thing, and number two, published.
Are you right?
Sarah got really excited.
Are you writing romance?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Just wanted to clarify. Oh, I mean, I have things to say, but you know.
Well, no, my advice is always break it down into bite-sized pieces. Instead of saying I'm going to write a novel this year, I'm going to write 1 page a day. I'm going to write 2 pages a day. And I still do that with every book. I write down my daily page deadline. So once it's in writing, it just forces me to, okay, I knew coming up here today I was going to get behind on my pages, which means I've got to write some more tomorrow. I still do it. I don't think in terms of I'm going to write this novel, but I start to break it down into drafts. First draft is the sloppy copy, so you don't edit yourself, you don't judge yourself. And then each draft you work on something different, but you break it into daily bite-sized goals. And then it's something you can wrap your head around. And you know by the end of the week you might have 10 pages, and that adds up very quickly.
So my advice is to not listen to everybody's advice.
And she's right.
Because
you're going to find your exact way to do it.
Your exact way to do it. And I don't mean, yeah,
that's
you know,
how
like
that's the advice.
and I will give you like my main advice is just listen to your gut. Like for a long time, I tried to write daily, and I tried to have word count goals, or I tried to never go back and edit. Like I would just draft through the first draft or whatever. Impossible. I can't do it. And every time I did that with a book, like it would just all go wrong. And I was like, well, this isn't really my process. And I think every writer's process is a little bit different. So I think you just have to find the thing that works. If you're just talking about like practicalities, like how do I get the words on the page or whatever, I think the main thing is just listen to your gut. Whatever you do that ends in a finished book is a great process. Like that is the number one process in the world for you, and you should use that.
Yeah, there's no rule. There's
no rules.
And I just gave you my process, and that's her process.
Right.
And what you'll do is you'll hear a lot of writers, and you'll take pieces from all of them.
Yeah, steal from everybody.
And you'll make your process.
I'm going to disagree with Alicia and say that you must listen to what I'm getting ready to tell you. You must.
Tracey.
You must. This is imperative. You must do this. Respect your audience. The romance reader is smart. We read a lot. Don't take us for granted. Don't just slap anything up there and think, oh, it's romance. People will read it. It might be up there, but we won't read it. So, write the best book. I mean, that's always going to be write the best book, and know that your audience is really smart, and we're going to get what you're going to say. And, write your voice, because you'll reach the more people, the more specific you are, because we've all had that experience. You must do that.
That's a good must, though. That's a good must.
I think that the trick with it always when you're so if I didn't have contracts, I wouldn't write, because I would because the greatest myth that the world has perpetuated is that like there's some kind of muse who takes over and like pours the words onto the page. It doesn't happen. Anytime if any of you say that that's what happens to you, I'm going to call you a liar in front of everyone. It just doesn't happen that way. Like some days you have a great day, and but for me at least, most days it's pulling teeth. It's terrible. It's a bad job. Revision is where all the magic happens. Like there's no such thing as a perfect first draft. They asked us if we wanted to read tonight, and I was like, I do not want to read, because every time I never read my books once they're printed, because then I literally like rewrite the whole scene before I read it. Like it's.
Changing it as
Just forget it. But the point is that you have to, so there's that, right? You have to know that the middle is always going to drag for you. There are going to be days when you don't want to write, and that's okay. And the other thing that I would say is that because of that myth about the muse, we don't protect our time as writers as well as we can. And we don't say to ourselves like, this is work, this is a job, I'm going to protect this time for me. And I can't, like, I don't know your life, but like, I can't go pick her up at school, or I can't, take the car in to be washed, or I can't like do the grocery shopping, or, any number of other things, because I have a job and this is my job. And that's hard for me. And I do have a contract, right? So like for somebody like you or many, many unpublished writers, you just have to appreciate that if you're writing, you're a writer, and you have to protect that time. And that's really hard, because I still, like, my mom still thinks that I just sit down and just pour it out. And why don't I just write the whole book in a week, right? Isn't that how it works? So you just have to carve out your time. And that's particularly hard. And I know that I sound crazy constantly talking about women, but that's particularly hard for women, because we do so much emotional work in life. So
I'm just going to add to that too, and this is something you must do as well. There are a few musts, and that one is just be really kind to yourself. I beat myself up constantly about everything in the world, and that's not conducive to good writing. So when you say, I'm going to write 10,000 words today, maybe just say, I'm going to write 500 words today. Yeah. No, I got it. I got it. I took it to a dark place.
I get it.
Let me take it to the crazy extreme. I'm like, why didn't I write 10,000 words today, guys? No, it is flashbacks. But it is because, right, when you set a goal and you can't meet the goal, what happens? You beat yourself up. So set goals that you know are attainable. Do not set unattainable goals, because you will end up kicking yourself every day when you get to nighttime and you go, I didn't read it. And I used to do that. Somebody told me, like, you have to write in the mornings. And I was like, okay. And then I never wrote in the mornings because I'd get up and suddenly it was like noon, like, and I'd still be eating my breakfast or something. So like there's something, and then I was like, well, I'm just an afternoon writer, so you just have to find your process. But in the process of finding your process, don't kill yourself.
I think we're at 8:00. So I think this is time for the book signing. I want to thank everyone for coming and for participating. And it's been a wonderful experience to be here with you.
And thank you to Politics and Prose again.
Yes, thank you so much.
So much.